Joining us today on Wall Street Silver is the legendary Lynette Zang, Chief Market Analyst at ITM Trading. Lynette, you were on fire yesterday,
Mhm.
and you've said repeatedly you're freaked out. Tell us why.
Because, this is something that I've actually been talking about since 2009, the SDR taking over as the world reserve currency. But to actually watch everything unfolding, leading us to that point, and that massive injection of, push a button and create, trillions of whatever SDRs. I mean, it freaked me out because it tells me how close we are. It tells me absolutely how close we are to the collapse.
Well, but I saw, I know exactly what you're talking about with the 650 billion, and I saw your chart that you showed yesterday on your show about how in 2009 they did like 161 billion, and now they're doing 650. Do you think this is just like a test run? And like if this current 650, let's call it tranche, whatever, is successful, the next one's going to be like a 2 trillion one that they're going to do. I mean, it just, if it works, this free money that they're creating and just typing up on their little computers, is it, what's the next step here?
Well, more of the same, but there's two pieces to it. That's why I was so freaked out. Because one piece is clearly the wheels are falling off of the global bus. That all the money creation that all these central banks and these governments have been doing, all of these experiments, is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of it is in order for the SDR to become the world reserve currency, people have, or governments, central banks have to hold enough of them in reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the excuses that they used were that in the long term, reserve assets could be constrained. In other words, they don't have enough reserve assets. So, I mean, it took me a minute or two of reading that over and over again, and I went, oh, crap. So they're definitely positioning to take over as the world reserve currency. But it's also inside of a crisis, so it's a double whammy. And will they do an even bigger one? Yes, they will. But what's also going to be very telling is when other governments, aside from the US, actually uses the substitution fund. Because remember, what do we always hear about the US not losing its status as the world reserve currency because they have the deepest, most liquid pool of assets and blah, blah, blah. They're held all over the world. So you have to get the SDR up into a similar place. So they're trading SDRs, there's SDR bonds, this big, huge tranche. Yes, it's 2009 was a test. That's when they were really seeing, dusting off the system that they put to sleep after, 1971, or after the petrodollar came into place. So 2009 was the big test of the whole system. This, I think, is probably a precursor to doing more so that there are enough SDRs out in that global system to take over as the world reserve currency.
So how are they going to spend, the 650 billion? Is it, I've heard things like it's debt relief for Africa, or, what is the purpose? Is it just to give every country a little bit of SDR so it's in their basket of reserves to trade among each other?
Well, it would be a little more
Mhm.
because the SDRs at this juncture act more like ice cubes in a glass of water, right? So they're given SDRs, your glass is half full, you're given a bunch of SDRs, and it looks like your reserves have gotten a lot bigger, even though they really haven't in some ways. But this is also kind of partly like universal basic whatever, because this was a general allocation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 43% of that allocation is going to emerging markets like in Africa, etc. So that's the justification. We're really doing it for them. But more than 50% is going to advance economies. Now, the advanced economies can then turn around and lend the SDRs to anybody else. So part of it is trading, which is probably what the advanced economies will do, just to generate some income, because why not? I mean, we're a big gambling casino anyway. And then the emerging markets that are struggling are likely to spend their other reserves that they have, so leaving the biggest chunk of SDRs in there. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So as I understand it, the SDR, an SDR is basically convertible to a basket of currencies, right? The US dollar, the euro, all the pound, all the major currencies. And then they can trade them, an SDR, for whatever currencies, and then use other fiat. So essentially, I know what it is, but it seems like the analogy is, this is just one form of fiat Ponzi piled on top of another form of fiat Ponzi. And we're just
absolutely.
And as who was it Rafe Farber, you've interviewed him. He described the Homer Simpson analogy as in the Homer Simpson household, they have the garbage rule, and you keep putting stuff in the garbage can, and it starts getting higher and higher, and they start stapling banana peels on it. And whenever it tips over, that's who has to take out the garbage. And that seems, that's the Rocky Farber analogy, but that seems like what they're doing with all these, Ponzi. It's one Ponzi on top of another.
Well, of course it is, because this is a major wealth transfer mechanism. But the thing that really scares me about the SDR is their stated goal of, they have discussed having a retail SDR, meaning that you and I would have an SDR on which all of our equity is held. And then it's broken down into little teeny pieces. And so, look, with all the data that they're gathering on us and our habits and the nudging, the psychological nudging and management that they do, how easy do you think it might be to inspire somebody to spend all of their equity in the direction that the World Economic Forum is already talking about?
Hey, Lee, do you think we're going to be looking at a crypto SDR probably, where they can track all our spending at an individual level?
Absolutely. But, let's go back into the history of the SDR. Now these were created in 1969. Mm-hmm. They were at the time defined as the equivalent, one SDR was defined as the equivalent of $1 or 0.888671 grams of gold. Mm-hmm. So $1 for less than a gram of gold. A gram of gold today is about $70-80 somewhere around there in that range. So basically, the SDR itself has lost the purchasing power.
But I mean, SDR has been devalued, so it really
like all other fiat currencies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they're not going to limit the number of SDRs they create,
right,
then they haven't solved any problem, right? We still have the problem of unlimited fiat. It's just now we've given it a new acronym. I mean, nothing's been fixed.
Well, no, nothing. Really? Does this shock you?
Yeah.
Of course nothing has been fixed. But what it does do is it does shift power.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it does. It shifts the power to unelected officials, because the IMF, Treasury Secretary, central bank heads.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, this is a massive push toward world government.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So why would the United States and the bankers who currently have all the world power through the Fed and through their control of the US dollar, why would they go along with this plan? It would seem, if this is a transfer of power, why would the United States, are we just asleep at the wheel? Why would we allow it?
Well, I mean, we did, I can't remember the senator's name, but we did try to give back world reserve currency status back in the 60s and the very early 70s. Mm-hmm. So, it's a big responsibility. It's a huge advantage. I mean, it's why we're so flush. But why would they do it? Because maybe it is easier if it is done, maybe they're trying to shift this gently rather than violently.
Oh, have it taken away from us. They'd rather do it, lose reserve currency status on our own terms rather than China maybe taking it
Right.
and without against our will.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see
Because if we do it that way, then we get to negotiate how much leverage we have inside of the SDR.
Which is a lot. I think the World Bank and the IMF are basically institutions controlled by the United States and Europe. So
At the moment.
yeah.
You know,
true.
I mean, everything is at the moment.
Yeah. But why 650 billion now? I mean, supposedly we're on the other side of the
Exactly.
the crisis. What's the crisis? Why do we still have QE infinity? Why do we have SDRs now coming out of the wazoo? Why are we spending 4.7 trillion? What is the crisis? Supposedly all the job numbers and economic numbers are turning up. Why is Europe still negative interest rates? Something's weird. Lynette, tell me what's going on.
This is the end of this currency's life cycle. It really is that simple. It really is that simple. And so they've got to figure out a new system to shift us into. And, obviously it's going to be the CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. We're going there. In fact, if you look at Venezuela, who is lopping off another 6 zeros, third time they have reset their currency to zero. But on October 1st, at the same time that they lop off their zeros, they're introducing their CBDC at the exact time. And they introduced a digital currency in 2018 when they lopped off, I think, 5 zeros or something like that, or 8 zeros, however many zeros there were. So, people, I want to be really clear on the fact that people think that when they introduce the CBDC, okay, it's over. We're now in a new currency, and see, nothing all that bad really happened. But the point that you made earlier is that they don't change anything. So if they don't change anything, nothing changes.
Yeah, if they can still print, trillions on a keyboard, you haven't created real money. I mean, you've just created another digital, well, I mean, the thing that has changed is they can track everything now. With dollars, at least paper dollars, they couldn't track everything.
Well, going into programmable money, it is beyond tracking. Yeah. It is way beyond tracking. It is ultimate control.
It's frightening. It really is.
It's, physical gold, physical silver, decentralized, out of the system, invisible, with the broadest base of buyer and the broadest base of utility. I mean, come on. There is nothing else that even comes close to meeting that criteria. And, as important as I always thought this was, once I saw the CBDCs, critical. And what happened with the IMF and the SDR, and also put that with looking at the loss of purchasing power that they're admitting to, right, on the Federal Reserve purchasing power of the consumer dollar, which I don't know. It's going down the fastest that I've seen it in my career. Right?
Lynette, do you think this release of these SDRs is their way of kind of implementing Greshams Law in the fiat system?
In many ways.
Dollars, yeah.
Yeah, in many ways, because we're transitioning into a centralized control, a globally, like you said, a one world government, a one world currency, and then you just have the few at the top that control and manage everything. And if people are not prepared with real good money, then all they end up with is, they become slaves, which, let's face it. Those of us that are older, we have another 30 or so years left, but my grandchildren have a lot more years left. So that's really who I'm fighting for, is everybody's grandchildren, because this is not okay with me. And I know we can't stop the CBDCs, I know we can't stop that, but you can protect yourself. I guarantee you that I will not be converting all of my gold and silver into CBDCs when they bring that out in 2023. I guarantee you I will not be doing that, because that's the way that I retain my choice and I retain my freedom, not just for myself, but for all of the other generations.
Do you think the public is losing confidence in all this? I mean, I just get this sense that more and more people are just losing faith in our institutions, and I don't want to get into the whole virus thing or response to that, but it just seems like this is damaging people who used to be like, oh yeah, I trust the government has my general welfare in, they're doing things for me, they're not against me. I mean, do you think people are really changing?
Yes, I do. And I think that's been coming a long time. I think really since 2008, the confidence in the institutions and the confidence even in the currencies has been declining. So the confidence in the central bankers, the confidence in the government, that makes getting this all together and making this transition as quickly as they can do it. I mean, you can't turn a cruise ship into a thimble of water. Mm-hmm. So that is probably what we have as an advantage, because we're a small enough group that we can go out and we can buy gold and silver physical, and we can protect ourselves. We can grow food, water, energy, security, and create this community, which is what we do here. And so that is a big advantage. And yes, I do think that, and so do they. I mean, the central bankers know the loss of confidence. Governments know the loss of confidence. So they're rushing to squelch that if they can, but it's too obvious.
Well, your channel and our channel, I call us economic preppers, but you focus on gold and silver. We're more silver and gold, right? We're silver first, but
right.
But there's more to it, and you just mentioned water security, food security, and that's something I never really thought about until this year. And being on YouTube like we are, and I've interviewed Alaskan prepper who's into silver also, but he's all into the prepper side. And I got to tell you, I've got 90 days of food now in my house. Good. I mean, I've got, luckily I live on a lake. So if I can, boil, I have a water source that just needs to be boiled, but.
Or filtered. I mean, I have a nice perky filter.
Yeah. Well, I got alligators. I got alligators in my lake. So it's a little,
So, at least it's protected water source, right?
Yeah. No one's going to get it. No one's stealing my water. The alligators will get them. But, but I know that's something you're big on also is you have an organic, what is it, a ranch? Do you call it a ranch or a farm?
I call it a farm. I'm an urban farmer.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm huge because I believe my research, right? So, I mean, I went from a little 2-bedroom condo that I was planning on retiring. And I had a little 2-bedroom condo that I could lock the door and I could go wherever I want and wouldn't have to think about a thing, to it's not a huge property. It's a half an acre, but I think the condo is something like 1,200 square feet. The house is about 4,000 square feet because I needed it big enough for my children, right? And I did the same thing with my bug out house. I am a prepper. I am, because in this environment, it is critical for you to be as self-sufficient and independent as possible.
Yeah.
If you're not, then you're under the whim of.
Well, I don't live in an urban city. I live more out of the exurbs of my region. So but I literally have maybe a third of an acre. I can't grow crops or anything sufficient.
Sure you can.
Well, not in sufficient quantity for me and 4 kids and everything. My wife.
Sure you can. Sure you can.
I mean,
grow up.
Okay, I have.
Okay, you grow up. you create search this. You create what's called a food forest.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I mean, look, I have a half an acre, but I've got a big house on it, and I've got a big pool on it, and I still grow plenty of food. So you grow a food tree, like, apples or peaches or almonds. I have nuts and I have fruit. And then you grow a vine, like, say, cucumbers, depending upon the season, or melons, the vine that can go up it, beans that can go up the tree. Then you put in something like an eggplant, so it's a nice big bush. And then you put in herbs, and then you put in root vegetables.
Gotcha.
And you can grow a lot of food in a very small place.
Well, what I was referring to is I've just I've got now 90 days of food, I think, and just stuff that doesn't go bad, just for an emergency. And I
Smart.
feel, do you have a specific target? We all need to be connected. The way we've been raised, we all still need to be connected to society. But is there, just to get through a crisis, do you have sort of a recommended target people should aim for? Is it like 3 months, 6 months worth of supplies to get through a crisis?
Well, it kind of depends. Now, I have not really done, I've done things with rice and beans and things like that, but I like fresh food.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
So, right. So even in my bug out house, that's the only thing that I don't have up there, and I'll be putting in a hot house. And I'm putting in a large enough hot house, not just to support me and my family and those that will be up there, but one that's large enough to support the community. And that's another thing that I want to really emphasize, because we are stronger as a group than we are as an individual. And where you may not have the wherewithal or the experience to actually grow your own food, maybe your neighbor does, but you have other talents that you can bring to the table. So in a community, of like-minded people, and like you said earlier, people are losing confidence. So more people are opening their minds and their thoughts to, well, how am I going to deal with this? And so you lead by example, but you also leave the door open for other people's examples so that we can come together and be stronger and weather this storm.
Yeah.
Lynette, do you think that there's a significant like black swan event on the horizon, and they're just kind of laying the groundwork for it? And what did you think of that big sell-off in gold and silver over the weekend? Does that tie into it?
I absolutely, 100%. I have been in this industry on some level since I was 10 years old, and I'm 60, almost 67. And I can tell you without a doubt, every single time there is a major occurrence like the SDR issuing all of that, all those, the IMF issuing all those SDRs, well, they got to dump gold. They've got to, and then subsequently dump silver. It happened when they let China into the SDR basket. It happens every time.
Yeah.
Because
Why is that?
Why?
Yeah, what are they doing?
Well, a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency. And if you thought that the currency was failing, you would probably make different choices than buy stocks or buy bonds or buy into any of those other fiat markets that they are creating. And so it is a way, it's perception management. It's a way for you to say, oh no, even as they're buying lots of gold, right?
Oh, the central banks, yeah.
Yeah,
Banks
they don't
that haven't bought
want you to.
banks that haven't bought in 10 years, they're now buying central banks, countries buying hundreds of tons of gold right now. But
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
No, but that is such a good point, Jim. And you got to keep in mind. So why does gold and silver dump when there's a quiet? Because did they really do a big announcement on the SDRs? No. They don't even want people even aware of the SDRs. But they definitely do not want you aware of gold. And that's the paper market. Push a button. It's cheap and easy to create a whole bunch of gold and silver that does not nor ever will exist. Physical.
From a trader's perspective, you look at what they did.
Sunday
If
night.
you have a big position and you want to liquidate it, you don't do it all at once. You nibble it out to not move the price. This was done deliberately, move the price.
You mean selling
Absolutely, 100%.
selling 4 billion in gold on Sunday evening in the thinnest? That didn't make sense. If I was a broker and I did that for a client, I'd probably be fired on Monday. So
Exactly.
it wasn't for a real client, right? No one goes in on a Sunday night. And here I'm going to show the chart to our screen. This is the silver chart, and this is Sunday evening right here.
Right.
What happened? And it bounced back right away, or partially. But who in their right mind goes in and sells billions of dollars of? And look, gold and silver did it at the same time. There's the
What a
gold,
coinky dink.
and there's the silver. I mean, something's going on here. And
Right.
we had a silver goes up in the silver squeeze at the end of January, and the CFTC is ready to launch an investigation on it. That happens on a Sunday night, and not a peep out of what's his name, Boston, or these other CFTC clowns. I mean,
Well,
it's
and SLV can't put a stupid silver basket together, and you've got silver trading at $23 an ounce. Give me a break.
I mean, everyone seems down on silver and gold, Lynette. I mean, and I don't get it. In this situation, to me, just screams buy silver and gold. I mean, the whole macro situation, whether it's negative interest rates in Europe or negative real rates because inflation's at CPI 5%, real rates probably 8 to 10%. Real
rate probably 12 to
inflation.
15%.
Yeah, we've got Mr. Williams from Shadow Stats coming on next week to talk about that.
Yeah, he's awesome.
But everything you're hearing, whether it's 650 billion in SDRs or 4.7 trillion in new infrastructure, that's none of which is paid for. It's all going to be Fed printed, whatever. It's why isn't gold 3,000 an ounce today? Why isn't silver 50, Lynette? What is
Because it would be noticeable.
Yeah.
I mean, it truly is that simple. It would be noticeable.
You
And then
aren't
people would
suggesting that the
protect-
World Central Bank suppressed the price of precious metals, are you?
No.
Well, they've admitted it.
Yeah, they have.
Remember, I'm data gal. I can't say it unless they say it, and they've said it more than once.
Yeah. But what does it take to break out of this? Is it we just got to buy all the physical so that they can't play the game anymore? I mean, just keep buying.
You buy all the physical, and then you wait until they reset the currency.
Yeah.
Because in order to move into a new system, which they have to, the CBDCs are still, from what I can see, still based on debt accumulation. I mean,
I think that's going to fail. I honestly think the CBDCs are going to fail. It doesn't change anything. I think they're going to try to shift to it, but then I think they fail.
Well, of course, because they have to burn off the debt in order to really go into a new system. You cannot build a new system on this crappy foundation. It's vulnerable, it's weak, and it can't hold an economy. It can't.
So a lot of people, on Wall Street Silver in our Reddit community and people I see talking on Twitter, and I see it in the comments of your own videos that I just saw from yesterday. People are like, if they're going to subsidize cheap silver and gold, driving it down, and they'll take my fiat and they'll take my paper junk and they'll give me real gold and real silver, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to keep taking it.
Exactly.
You keep giving me the hard assets, I'll keep giving you that paper. And stop complaining about silver and gold being so cheap, because they're giving you a gift right now.
Exactly.
And here's the thing, they're not giving it to the people like you and me. We're just taking advantage of it. They're doing it for the people who are actually buying all the gold. And that's the billionaires. The billionaires are buying it by the truckload right now. They are loaded
I don't know.
up.
Did you see the story today where Gates, Bloomberg, Dalio, Bezos have all gone into partnership to purchase mines?
Really?
Yeah.
Greenland. I saw that Greenland project, right?
Yeah. So
write that down. I didn't see that.
No,
I didn't know that.
I just saw it in the past hour. I saw what he's talking about, but there's some battery, they need the raw minerals for electric car batteries, and they've all gone in on some project in Greenland. I haven't read all the details, but You know,
Wow.
it's like, how are you going to, how are you going to mine all those minerals? Is it with solar and wind and electric motors? No. Guess what? You need diesel and fossil fuels for mining for all this green EV. That's another video, Lynette. That's another video.
That is definitely another video. But yeah, I mean, you just have to look at things, logically, because everything is so illogical right now.
Yeah.
But what do people look at? They look at the stock market. That's what they look at.
Yeah. Well, everyone's in index funds, and it's all passive investing by computer algorithms. And I think that's part of why silver and gold are not behaving as we would expect based on history, because the computers and passive ETFs are controlling everything right now. Is that part of it, you think?
No, I mean, no, I think silver and gold are behaving exactly as they have historically when a government wants to suppress what they're doing.
Okay, I see what you mean.
And fleece the population. And the piece that, and so I agree with what you said before, and I think I even said that in my video. This is a gift, and you take advantage of the gift because you never let a good crisis go to waste. And do I think that there is a huge black swan event coming up? Yeah, I do. I do. Just like what happened in 2020. It was a nice big black swan event and awfully convenient timing. Awfully convenient timing. We've got the repo markets that are in deep doo-doo right now. Are they the debt ceiling? I even almost hate to bring up the debt ceiling. The real reason why that even matters is because the Treasury is being forced to put additional liquidity into the markets. They have to get it down to a certain level. But of course, they're going to either raise it or they'll suspend it again.
Yeah.
I mean, just suspend it. What the hey?
That's just pure theater. Everything with the debt ceiling. It's not an issue. They're going to raise it or something. But
exactly.
That raises a good point. Is to, the latest talk from the Fed is all about, oh yeah, hey, taper. If
Garbage.
Some of these clowns that on the Federal Reserve Board, they send them out one at a time with different statements to jawbone the market. But the latest talk is, oh, the economic numbers are looking so great, we could start tapering as soon as October. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
For one thing, let's define taper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, define that for us.
Because all they're really talking about is, but I don't agree that this is going to be able to happen, or even if it does happen, it won't last long, is buying a little less than 120 billion a month. They're not talking about liquidating anything.
Yeah.
And they have to actually even step it up because globally, other countries are buying less and less of our bonds and our dollar denominated, and they're issuing a lot less dollar denominated debt. So there's a lot of loss of confidence that's happening on a global basis to us as the world reserve currency. But can they do it? No, they can't do it. They cannot run off their balance sheet. Maybe they can buy a little teeny less because what they promised it would be glacial.
Yeah. Watching paint dry, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They promised it would be glacial. So if they're doing 120 billion, what do? 119 billion?
Yeah. So I got we have about 7 trillion that is about to mature.
Yes.
The debt that's coming that we have to roll over. So
yes.
It's not just the new $3 trillion deficits that have to be financed. All that 7 trillion that's rolling over in short term or long term as it matures, all those investors who maybe don't want to reinvest in the US dollar or in treasuries, well, guess what? They're going to move somewhere else. A portion of them, maybe some will be back, but a portion of them won't. Well, guess what? The Fed's the only buyer who's going to step up to refinance that. Or we have the 3 trillion. Here's what blows my mind, and you tell me whether my numbers jibe with your understanding. We have 3 trillion in deficits just built in right now.
Yep.
And on top of that, we're now adding another 4.5 trillion in infrastructure spending.
I heard that number was closer to 7.
Yeah, but it's in what realm do they even think that this is possible? I mean, we're not even talking tax increases. We're not even talking about anything. I mean, remember back in 2009, they were freaking out over 800 billion for TARP. Now that's just like 800 billion. No one even, that doesn't even rate a newspaper
No.
article anymore.
No, it doesn't. You know, if things can stay insane longer than you would imagine, but there's going to come a point, and I think we're fast approaching it. I mean, I've been doing a lot more videos lately because there's just so much information
We're
that
speeding up.
seems to be. Yeah, have you not? You've noticed that too.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think there is going to be a big black swan event soon. And we can do it until it either becomes like enough loss of confidence occurs that the public just stops believing the garbage. And that is a trend that's escalating, or they're ready to make that next crisis and that transition.
Yeah.
Because in order for us to accept what they have in mind for us, we have to be scared enough and in enough pain to accept whatever garbage they want to cram down our throats.
Yeah.
A scary thought, Lynn. Very scary.
It is.
But it's reality.
It is reality. And people, you know, look, you don't need to wake up to it, but I got to tell you, ignorance does not make you immune. It just leaves you vulnerable. And a random opinion, when you look at the data and the facts, I'll drive around here in Phoenix. I'll drive around, and I cannot believe the level of construction that I see here. I mean, I've lived here since my girls were 6, you know, in their 40s. So for 34 years, the level of these huge cranes and all of this construction. And if I didn't know better, I'd probably believe that things must be good because look at all of this activity, look at all of this construction. But what I also know that most people don't know is that all of the debt that's financing all of this construction is converted into Wall Street products and sold back to pension plans, retirement funds, mutual funds, ETFs, and what have you. So the individual is paying all the fees and taking all the risk. And when this whole thing implodes, they will be taking it on the shorts.
Yep. It's you wonder how much of that if we had normalized interest rates and, you know, remember when mortgages used to be 6 or 7%? I mean, it was
My first mortgage,
yeah,
12%.
yeah.
I got married in, let me see, when did I get married? I think
You better remember this.
You better remember this.
Why? I haven't been married to him since my daughters were 3.
Okay.
So I don't really have to remember it.
Okay.
But I think it was 77.
Gotcha.
And
That's when they were giving toasters out at banks, right?
yes, I remember that too. And yeah, and my first mortgage, my house was something like, I don't know, $55,000 or something like that, 12% interest.
Well, that just raises the point. There's so much debt in the system. You know, back in the 1970s, to kill inflation, we had Paul Volcker, and he had to raise rates to 20% in order to get inflation under control.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah, and I'm about to set you up with a softball question for that. So
Okay.
stick with me here. And this time, you know, I looked it up. We had debt to GDP back in the late 70s of around 35%. Now we're approaching 150% debt to GDP. And we don't even have a Paul Volcker mentality in the Fed. So no one's going to be raising rates to 20%. So is there any scenario to get inflation under control this time? I mean, if it goes, and we're already at, you know, the official's 5%, the unofficial shadow stats is probably 12%. What stops it this time from going to hyperinflation?
There's nothing, because they've already juiced with all of the money printing that they've been doing since 2008. There's already hyperinflation that's built into the system. Mm-hmm. But I want to go back to that period of time that you were talking about, because when you look at where interest rates were, okay, here was the theory when they passed when they allowed the central banks to control inflation. And how did they do it? Via interest rates, right? So you raise interest rates, that stalls, fewer people borrow and spend. You lower interest rates, more people will borrow and spend. I think, honestly, to kick this whole thing off, they needed ramp room. Because they wouldn't have had very much room where interest rates were before Paul Volcker came in and juiced them. I think the Fed funds rate was like 21.5 intraday to a high. So, and then moving from there forward, every time we would hit a crisis, they would drop those interest rates a substantial amount, 5.5 to 5.75%. And that did inspire that borrowing and spending. Can they raise the rates? No, they can't. You already indicated all of the debt that's rolling over. I think globally it's something like 13 trillion, and that was in January of short-term debt. No, they cannot raise the interest rates, but honestly, I don't even think that would work anymore. I mean, you look at other countries that are making that attempt, and you look at us when we made that attempt, 2016, right?
Yeah.
And, every single country that has attempted to raise rates or run off their balance sheet, what they call normalizing, has failed 100%. 100%. So, no, there is nothing.
We're past the point of no return. Once you get past, I think 90% debt to GDP, it's really tough to recover from it.
Lynette, do you think there's any way we can fix this?
No.
We just got to go through the valley of death here to get to the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having said that, because it sounds like it's all doom and gloom, there's always opportunity in crisis.
Yeah.
And what would be wrong to have the wealth transfer your way?
Yeah.
Because the wealth is transferring. It never disappears. It just shifts location. And that's what, aside from your freedom, which what's that worth to you? I mean, that's what the gold, and that's why I'm not more about gold than I am about silver. I'm more about functionality. What am I trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
Could I buy a building with a bunch of silver? Sure. But it would take, a lot of silver to do that. And I can do it a lot more conveniently and efficiently with gold.
Well, I think a lot of young people are getting tuned into this, but they seem to be geared towards crypto. And I have some friends who keep saying, "Oh, you need to do this crypto or this." They tell me their favorite crypto, and God, I can't tell you the number of emails I get these days about this subject. But it's my response is, I'm not against crypto, but my general response is I have no idea which crypto is going to win. Whereas with gold and silver, I have no doubt that they will have value on the other side of this.
Right.
On the other side of whatever's going to happen, and I don't know what's going to happen. We could be totally wrong, and this could all be 20 years. I don't know. But on the other side, I just have no doubt that the metals of gold and silver will have value in whatever the future currency is. And I just have no idea which cryptos will still be around. That is why I personally stick with the metals. And, I know a lot of other people are on that same sort of page. I know you are.
Yeah, I am.
But
I'm definitely on that page.
I just, that's my response to the cryptos. I'm not against cryptos. I just don't know which one's going to win. So I don't know which one to pick.
Right. And the battle is, it seems like Wall Street has chosen Bitcoin, but here's the other part of it. The reason why there's no doubt in my mind about gold and silver is because of its broad utility. And so, I almost never hear anybody talk about the utility of these physical metals. But I can kind of see some utility for cryptocurrencies. I mean, you can put them on a thumb drive and you can travel. Okay. So that's good. I can put gold in my pocket or wear it and I can travel. But I'm not really clear on what the rest of the utility is. And so when you're going through a fire, do you want a paper shield that maybe can protect you for a little while if you put wax on it and then it burns up? Or do you want a metal shield that can withstand that fire?
Mhm.
And that's the choice. I saw when Bitcoin came out, I remember it really clearly, and it was shortly after that. It was January of 2009 when they started QE in March of that same year. And it was always touted as gold. And we'll look at the symbol. It's a gold coin.
Yeah.
Wall Street seems to have chosen Bitcoin. So I think it'll survive, but I'm not really sure. And I have to figure out how to say this because I want to say at what price, but it's not nominal, right? I mean, it doesn't matter how many dollars you have. It matters what you can convert them into, right? So Bitcoin could go to 5 trillion. But if you can only convert them into dollars, and the dollar, nobody will accept the dollar, what do you got?
Yeah. Good
Nothing.
point.
And for people to think that it's out of the system is open your eyes. It's not out of the system.
Yeah.
Turn on Bloomberg, turn on CNBC, read a paper.
Well,
It's not out of the system.
And there's a ledger that tracks every transaction.
yeah. Well, also the bill that's about to pass through Congress is putting all sorts of new regulations and reporting requirements on crypto transactions. So it remains to be seen what the regulatory, just how anonymous are you really, and how free are you from taxation with Bitcoin? We're about to find out. I don't know what's exactly in this bill that's about to pass Congress, but I heard it's in there, something.
Well, they're fighting, the industry is fighting that piece of it.
Yeah.
But that kind of goes back to when you asked me, why did gold and silver dump?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, do they really want you to own gold and silver and be independent?
And that's the best reason to buy it right there, just to check out of the system. Because I don't want to play their game. I don't want to play their game, Lynette.
Exactly. I mean, we all have to a degree.
Yeah.
But if you have physical gold and silver in your possession that's truly decentralized, out of the system, and invisible,
Yeah.
then
You've got
have
options.
more choices.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you have your options. Hey, any final questions, Lee or Ivan?
No, once again, we covered so much, and
Yeah.
we really appreciate the time with you, Lynette. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming back.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
it's
appreciate
my
it.
pleasure. You guys are great.
Can we do it again?
And we had fun in Miami.
Oh yeah. Well,
Can
hey, where else are you going to be later? I'm going to New Orleans in October. Are you going to be at that one, or are you going to? Or
They didn't invite me.
Well,
Ah.
I'm inviting
Believe
you.
that?
I'll buy you a ticket. You want to get there, and we'll go to Bourbon Street in New Orleans.
I actually am scheduled to go to New Orleans, I think right after that, because I was going to go to the jazz festival, which I've now heard has been canceled.
Oh
No.
gosh.
But I'm still going to go. But I don't think I can move it up sooner. I'm not sure because I'm going with my sister and some friends. So there's kind of a group of us.
Gotcha.
But if you're there when I'm there, we can definitely go to Bourbon Street.
Well, hey, there's a bucket list thing. Go drink it on Bourbon Street with Lynette Zang. Yeah, I'll do that. All right.
That's if we're allowed to travel by then.
I will. I'll just hop in my car and drive from Florida. I'm not gonna, so to heck with their travel rules. I'm still gonna live my life. Luckily we live in Florida, where we're still a free state here, without all these restrictions. But
Where are you in Florida?
what's that?
Oh, can I ask where you are in Florida?
Yeah, in the Orlando region.
Orlando, because I used to live in Sarasota.
Okay.
So, and I really loved Sarasota.
Yeah.
The only reason why I moved was because my family was here and my children, I felt they needed to be around their relations inside the family.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I would have stayed because I loved Sarasota.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I've been there, Siesta Key. It's a gorgeous area.
Hmm.
Well, Lynette, thank you so much. And let's do it again in 2 or 3 months and get your perspective on how things change. We really love talking to you.
I love being here, so thank you for having me.